For 10,000 years, the Emperor of mankind remained silent upon the golden throne, a dying god whose thoughts were hidden behind layers of faith, secrecy, and impossible sacrifice. Then, across the entire Imperium, every mind capable of touching the warp heard the same impossible message. It was not a command. It was not a prophecy. It was not a warning for humanity. The Emperor had spoken one final time, and the message was meant for something else. The first thing I remember is not the voice. It is the silence that came before it. In the Imperium of man, silence is something that almost never exists. There is always the grinding roar of ancient machinery beneath your feet, the endless chanting of billions praying for salvation, the thunder of orbital weapons firing across distant worlds, the screams of soldiers dying beneath alien skies, and the mechanical whispers of servants who have forgotten what it means to be human. Silence belongs to the dead. Silence belongs to abandoned worlds where the Emperor's light has finally disappeared. Silence belongs to places where humanity has lost. But on that day, deep beneath the impossible walls of the Imperial Palace, silence arrived not because something had ended. It arrived because something had awakened. I was a simple archivist of the Adeptus Administratum, one insignificant soul among trillions, tasked with preserving records that no living person would ever read. My entire existence had been spent surrounded by the forgotten memories of humanity. Ancient war reports from planets that no longer existed, final messages from fleets lost inside the warp, confessions from soldiers who died believing nobody would ever know their names. The Imperium creates mountains of information, but it also creates mountains of forgotten souls. I was one of the people buried beneath those mountains. I never expected history to notice me. I never expected to witness something that would shake the foundation of the entire Imperium. Nobody did. The Golden Throne had been silent for 10,000 years. That was the truth everyone accepted. The Emperor was alive, but distant. Present, but unreachable. His physical body remained imprisoned upon the ancient throne, surrounded by the greatest technology humanity had ever created and the endless devotion of the Adeptus Custodes, while his psychic power continued to guide humanity through the Astronomicon. Every day, billions prayed to him. Every day, billions asked for his protection. Every day, he answered with silence. And humanity learned to accept that silence as love, until the day he finally spoke. It happened at exactly the same moment across thousands of worlds. No warning, no disturbance, no sign in the stars. The first reports came from astropathic choirs scattered throughout the Imperium. They described the same phenomenon. The warp became completely still, not calm, not peaceful. Still, the Imperium, a realm of endless nightmares and impossible emotions, suddenly stopped moving as if even the forces of chaos themselves had paused to listen. Demons disappeared from battlefields. Possessed warriors collapsed without explanation. Warp storms that had existed for centuries vanished in a single heartbeat. Every creature connected to the psychic realm felt it. Something had reached into the warp, something powerful enough to silence it. On Terra, inside the Imperial Palace, the effect was immediate. Thousands of servants stopped working. Millions of machines began producing errors. Ancient systems that had functioned continuously since the Horus Heresy suddenly shut down as if their machine spirits had become afraid. The custodes standing guard near the Golden Throne did not move. They did not speak. They did not even breathe for several seconds, because they felt something they had not felt in 10,000 years. The Emperor was aware, not active, not healed, not returned, but aware. Then every astropath in the palace screamed. I remember that sound more than anything else, not because it was loud, but because it was impossible. They were not screaming from pain. They were screaming because they had witnessed something their minds were never designed to understand. Some collapsed instantly. Others simply stared forward with empty expressions, whispering the same words over and over again. He remembers. Nobody knew what they meant. Nobody dared ask. Then the message arrived. It did not come through speakers. It did not travel through communication networks. It did not move through the air. It appeared directly inside the minds of every being capable of receiving it. Human, alien, psyker, navigator. Even creatures hiding beyond the borders of the Imperium felt its presence. For 17 seconds, the entire galaxy heard the Emperor. The first emotion was not power, it was sadness. That was what terrified me most. For thousands of years, humanity had imagined the Emperor as something beyond emotion. A god, a weapon, a perfect being who sacrificed everything for mankind. But when his voice entered my mind, I did not feel the voice of a god. I felt the voice of someone who had carried an unbearable burden for far too long. Someone who had watched countless generations disappear. Someone who had seen every victory become another tragedy. Someone who knew the end of the story, but continued writing anyway. His first words were not a command. They were an apology, and that single realization destroyed everything I believed. The Emperor of Mankind was apologizing. Across the Imperium, religious leaders collapsed, trying to understand it. The ecclesiarchy immediately declared it a divine miracle. But even they could not explain why their own priests were crying. The Inquisition attempted to erase the event before it spread, but they quickly discovered the impossible truth. There was nothing to erase. Everyone remembered. Soldiers on distant battlefields remembered. Children sleeping beneath hive cities remembered. Governors hiding inside planetary fortresses remembered. The message existed inside them like a scar. Yet nobody could agree on the exact words. Every person heard something slightly different. Some claimed he warned of a coming war. Others believed he revealed the truth behind humanity's future. Some insisted he spoke of the chaos gods. Others believed he spoke about something far older than chaos itself. But every witness agreed on one thing. The Emperor was not speaking to humanity. Humanity was only hearing a conversation that was never meant for them. The message was directed beyond the veil, beyond the warp, beyond everything mankind understood. Something had been listening, something that had waited for 10,000 years, something that even the Emperor feared enough to whisper instead of declare. The final seconds were the ones that broke the strongest minds. Because before the message ended, everyone felt another presence. Not a voice, not a creature, a presence. It was the sensation of standing in the darkness and realizing you were not alone. The Emperor had not reached out into the universe. He had answered something that had reached out to him first. When the 17 seconds ended, the Imperium returned to normal. Machines restarted. Astropathic signals resumed. Battlefields continued. Ships returned to the warp. But nothing was the same. Because humanity had spent 10,000 years believing the Emperor was protecting them from the darkness outside. Now, for the first time, people wondered if the Emperor had been protecting the darkness from humanity. In the weeks that followed, records disappeared, witnesses vanished. Entire sections of the Imperial Palace were sealed forever. But I remained. I continued my work. I continued recording the things nobody wanted remembered. And every night, when the palace became quiet and the distant machinery slowed, I heard something beneath the walls. A faint sound, a whisper carried through ancient metal. Not the Emperor speaking, not anymore. It was something answering him. And that was when I understood the true horror of the message. The Emperor had not broken his silence because humanity needed to hear him. He had broken his silence because something else was finally ready to answer. For 10,000 years, humanity had worshipped the silence of the Emperor, but after those 17 seconds, silence became something far more terrifying. Before that day, silence meant distance. It meant that the Master of Mankind was enduring his eternal sacrifice upon the Golden Throne, trapped between life and death, carrying the impossible burden of guiding a dying species through the endless darkness of the galaxy. But after the message, silence meant something else. It meant waiting. Every corner of the Imperium began waiting for something nobody could name. On Terra, the greatest minds of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Inquisition, and the Custodes searched for answers hidden beneath layers of ancient secrets. But every answer created more questions. I was assigned to a special archive investigation, though nobody explained who had ordered it. That was the first sign that something was wrong. In the Imperium, every order has a signature, every command has a chain of authority, and every action has a reason. But this order arrived without a name, without a seal, without a record of origin. It simply appeared inside my data slate one morning, instructing me to report to a forgotten section of the Imperial Palace that officially did not exist. The location was beneath the oldest foundations of Terra, deeper than the public areas of the palace, deeper than the vaults where ancient weapons of the Great Crusade were stored, deeper than the forbidden laboratories where humanity's greatest mistakes had been buried. The only information attached to the order was a single sentence: recover what the Emperor attempted to hide. I spent several hours wondering whether it was a test. In the Imperium, curiosity can be a death sentence. Knowledge itself is dangerous. There are secrets so powerful that even knowing they exist can make you a target. But something inside me already knew I would follow the order. Not because I was brave, not because I believed I was important, but because I had heard him. The Emperor's voice had entered my mind, and no human being can experience something like that and return to ordinary life. The first thing I noticed when I entered the lower levels was the absence of Imperial symbols. No aquila, no statues, no prayers carved into the walls. The Imperium marks everything it controls with signs of devotion. But these halls had none. They looked older than the Imperium itself. The walls were made from materials that even the Mechanicus could not identify. Ancient metal and stone blended together as if created by a civilization that understood technology and architecture as one single art. The deeper I traveled, the quieter it became. Even my own footsteps sounded distant, as if the corridor itself was absorbing every noise. Eventually, I reached a chamber sealed behind a door with no visible mechanism. There was no lock, no control panel, no security system. Only a simple symbol carved into the surface. It was not the Imperial Aquila. It was not any known human language. Yet when I looked at it, I understood its meaning, not through translation, through memory. The symbol represented a warning, not keep out, not danger, something far worse. It meant, do not wake what is listening. I stood there for several minutes before the door opened by itself. Inside was not a weapon, not a hidden laboratory, not a forbidden artifact. It was an archive. But unlike every Imperial archive I had ever seen, this one contained no records of humanity's victories, no accounts of battles, no heroic stories. It contained failures. The first document I discovered was from the earliest days of the Imperium, before the Great Crusade had reached its height. It described the Emperor's search through the galaxy for something humanity had forgotten. Not technology, not knowledge, something else. A presence. The records were incomplete, damaged by time or intentionally destroyed, but one phrase appeared again and again. The enemy beyond the enemy. At first I believed it referred to chaos. Every citizen of the Imperium is taught that chaos is the ultimate threat. The warp, the demons, the dark gods who seek to consume humanity's soul. But the document suggested something different. They described chaos not as the beginning of the nightmare, but as a symptom, a wound, something created by a deeper problem. The Emperor had known. He had known for thousands of years that the galaxy contained dangers even the chaos gods feared. And whatever that danger was, it had noticed him. The next records were personal. That surprised me more than anything else. The Emperor rarely left personal writings. He was a being who existed through actions, not emotions. But these records were different. They were fragments of thoughts, moments recorded by ancient machines connected to the Golden Throne. They showed something impossible: doubt. The Emperor had doubted himself. The greatest human being who had ever existed, the architect of the Imperium, the conqueror of Terra, the creator of the Primarchs. had questioned whether his plan was ever enough. One fragment described a conversation between the Emperor and one of his closest advisors before the Horus Heresy. The advisor asked whether humanity could truly survive without gods. The Emperor's answer was not preserved completely, but one sentence remained. The greatest danger is not that mankind will lose faith. It is that mankind will discover why faith was necessary. I read those words repeatedly, because suddenly the entire history of the Imperium looked different. The Emperor had not simply fought against religion because he disliked it. Perhaps he feared what humanity would worship if they discovered the truth. Perhaps the gods of humanity were never created by belief. Perhaps belief was humanity's response to something that had always been there. The final record in the chamber was the most disturbing. It was dated only a few days before the Emperor's message. That was impossible. The Golden Throne had been sealed for 10,000 years. The Emperor had barely communicated with anyone directly. Yet this record existed. It contained only one line. The door is opening. Nothing else. No explanation, no description, just those 4 words. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a corrupted file, a damaged piece of forgotten data, anything except the truth. But then I noticed something written beneath it, something that made my blood turn cold. It was not written by a human hand. It was not written by a machine. It was written in the same impossible symbols carved into the entrance door. Somehow, I understood it. The message said, "He kept us waiting for 10,000 years. Now we will see why." At that moment, the entire chamber shook, not from an explosion, not from an attack. Something much worse. Something beneath us had moved. Far above, throughout the Imperial Palace, thousands of alarms began sounding simultaneously. The custodes activated their weapons. The mechanics detected impossible energy fluctuations. Astropaths across Terra began screaming again. But this time, there was no message, no voice. Only a feeling that spread through every living mind connected to the warp. Fear. Not humanity's fear. Not the fear of soldiers facing death. This was something older. Something that had existed before mankind looked toward the stars and before the Emperor walked among humanity. Even the creatures of the warp were afraid, and that was when I finally understood the purpose of the Emperor's final message. He was not warning humanity about what was coming. He was warning whatever was coming that humanity was no longer alone, because the Emperor had been waiting for 10,000 years, not to save us, not to return, not to reclaim his throne. He had been waiting for the moment when something beyond the universe finally came close enough to hear him. And now that moment had arrived. The Imperium of man was built upon one undeniable belief, that humanity was alone in its suffering, alone against the aliens who wished to destroy us, alone against the endless storms of the warp, alone against the darkness between the stars. Every citizen born beneath the shadow of the Aquila learned the same lesson from childhood, that mankind stood at the center of a hostile universe, surrounded by enemies who waited patiently for our weakness. But the deeper I descended into the forgotten records beneath the Imperial Palace, the more I began to understand the terrifying truth. The Emperor had never believed humanity was alone. He had spent his entire existence preparing for something that the rest of mankind was never allowed to know existed. And now, after 10,000 years of silence, that secret had begun to awaken. After the chamber beneath the palace shook, I expected soldiers. I expected custodes. I expected the Inquisition to arrive and erase everything I had discovered. Instead, nothing happened. That frightened me more. The alarms continued above, but nobody came. Nobody entered the vault. Nobody demanded answers. It was as if the most powerful organizations in the Imperium had all received the same command at the same moment. Do nothing. Wait. Observe. I had spent my entire life believing the Imperium reacted to every threat with overwhelming force. Exterminatus, armies, weapons capable of destroying worlds. But now, facing something hidden beneath the Emperor's own home, humanity did not attack. Humanity waited. And that meant whoever or whatever was approaching was something even the Imperium feared. I remained inside the ancient archive, surrounded by records that should never have survived. The final message of the Emperor echoed inside my mind constantly. Not the words, the emotion behind them, the sorrow, the exhaustion, the unbearable weight of someone who had carried the future of an entire species alone. For 10,000 years, people had imagined the Emperor as a distant god sitting upon a golden throne. But I no longer saw a god. I saw a prisoner, a being trapped inside his own creation. The first humans who followed him believed he would lead them into a perfect future. The Primarchs believed he would create a new age of enlightenment. The armies of the Great Crusade believed they were bringing unity to the galaxy. But every empire eventually discovers the same cruel truth. Victory does not remove darkness. It only reveals deeper darkness waiting behind it. The Emperor had discovered that truth before anyone else. The records showed fragments of events erased from official history. Encounters during the Great Crusade that never appeared in Imperial archives. Worlds conquered and immediately abandoned. Fleets ordered to destroy their own records. Entire civilizations removed from existence without explanation. At first I thought these were mistakes. The Imperium is enormous. Information disappears. History becomes corrupted. But there was a pattern. Every forgotten event involved the same thing. A signal. A presence. A moment when humanity looked too deeply into the unknown and found something looking back. One record described a lost expedition beyond the edges of known space. The explorers reported finding a region where the warp behaved differently. No storms, no demons, no psychic disturbances. At first, the expedition believed they had discovered a place of peace. Then they realized the truth. The warp was silent because something else was occupying that space. Something powerful enough that even the Imperium avoided it. The expedition sent one final message before disappearing. It contained only 5 words. There is something behind creation. The Emperor personally ordered the information destroyed. But one copy survived. Another record described a conversation between the Emperor and a Primarch. The name had been removed, the identity erased, but the words remained. The Primarch asked why the Emperor feared the warp if he was powerful enough to challenge the gods that lived within it. The Emperor's answer was something that haunted me. Because the warp is not the darkness, it is only the reflection. I read that sentence for hours. The implications were impossible. Everything humanity knew about reality might have been incomplete. The chaos gods, the warp, the endless war between existence and corruption. Perhaps these were not the final enemies. Perhaps they were only shadows created by something much older. Something beyond human understanding. The Emperor had known, and he had built the Imperium not just as a civilization, but as a shield. The Great Crusade was not merely conquest. The Primarch project was not merely about creating generals. The Astronomicon was not merely a beacon. Every piece of his grand design had another purpose. Humanity was being prepared, not for expansion, for survival. But then came the betrayal of Horus, the Horus heresy, the greatest disaster in human history. Millions of worlds destroyed. Half the legions turned against their father. The Emperor wounded beyond recovery. The dream of the Imperium shattered forever. For 10,000 years, humanity believed the heresy was the moment everything went wrong. But standing inside that forgotten archive, I began to wonder if the Emperor's greatest failure was not losing the war against Horus. Maybe his greatest failure was knowing what was coming and still being unable to stop it. The Primarchs were created to lead humanity into the future, but they were also created because the Emperor needed warriors capable of facing threats ordinary humans could never survive. They were not just sons. They were weapons against impossible enemies. And even they had not been enough. The archive contained one final section, a sealed collection marked with a warning unlike anything else. It was not written by the Administratum. It was not written by the Mechanicus. It carried the personal mark of the Emperor himself. The symbol had been damaged by time, but I recognized it immediately. It was the same symbol I had seen on the sealed door. The warning translated into a simple sentence. If this record is opened, the message has already failed. My hands shook as I accessed the data. Inside was not a historical record. It was a confession. The Emperor admitted that he had known the Golden Throne would become his prison. He knew humanity would misunderstand him. He knew the Imperium would transform into something he never intended. But he also knew something else. The day would come when his silence would end. Not because he chose to speak, because he would no longer be able to remain silent. The final line of the confession was damaged, but enough remained to understand its meaning. When they hear my voice, they will believe I am calling them. A long pause followed. Then another sentence appeared. I am not. At that moment, the chamber lights died. Every screen went black. Every machine stopped functioning. Then from somewhere beyond the walls, I heard a sound. A voice. Not inside my mind this time. A real voice. A whisper traveling through ancient metal. It was not human. It was not a demon. It was something that had waited beneath the foundations of Terra for longer than the Imperium had existed. The whisper spoke only one word. My name. And in that moment, I understood why the Emperor had hidden the truth. The greatest secret of mankind was never that there were monsters in the darkness. Humanity already knew that. The greatest secret was that some monsters had been hiding from us, because they were afraid of what we might become. The Imperium had always believed that the greatest tragedies of history were behind them. The Horus Heresy, the fall of the Primarchs, the endless wars against alien civilizations, the birth of the Chaos Gods as enemies openly hunting mankind's soul. Every generation looked backward at those horrors and convinced themselves that the worst had already happened. The galaxy had survived its darkest age. Humanity had endured. The Emperor still sat upon the Golden Throne. The Astronomicon still burned. The Imperium still stood. But what I discovered beneath Terra revealed the most terrifying possibility of all. The greatest catastrophe of humanity was not something that had happened in the past. It was something the Emperor had spent 10,000 years trying to delay. After the revelation inside the hidden archive, I was no longer allowed to leave. No official order was given. No guards arrived. No chains were placed around my wrists. The Imperium did not need such methods. Instead, every exit from the underground vault simply stopped functioning. Doors that had worked moments earlier refused to open. Elevators froze between levels. Communication systems returned only static. It was as if the palace itself had decided I was not finished learning. At first, I believed I was trapped by the Inquisition. But slowly I realized something far more disturbing. The Inquisition was trapped too. The security protocols surrounding the archive had activated automatically, sealing everyone away. Whatever intelligence controlled this place was older than the organizations of the Imperium, older than the current age of humanity, perhaps older than the Emperor's own empire. For 3 days I remained inside that forgotten chamber, studying every fragment left behind. 3 days without proper food, 3 days without sunlight, 3 days listening to the distant movement beneath the floor. That was the part I could never explain to anyone who asked what happened afterward. There was something beneath the palace, something moving slowly, not walking, not crawling, moving like a thought traveling through a sleeping mind. Every few hours, the entire chamber would shake slightly, and every time it happened, the ancient machines surrounding me displayed the same message. Threshold approaching. I had no idea what threshold meant, but the Emperor did. The final records revealed that the Golden Throne was not only a life support system. For 10,000 years, humanity believed it existed to preserve the Emperor's body. But the truth was much more complicated. The Golden Throne was a lock, a barrier, a machine built around an impossible purpose, maintaining a separation between two realities. The Emperor was not simply sitting upon a throne. He was holding something closed. The realization changed everything I knew about the Imperium. Every prayer, every sacrifice, every war fought in his name. Humanity believed the Emperor was protecting us from the enemies outside, but perhaps he had been protecting us from what was already inside. The records describe the final moments before the Emperor was placed upon the Golden Throne after his battle with Horus. Official history claimed the Emperor was mortally wounded and brought to the throne as the last chance to preserve his life. But hidden accounts suggested another reason. During his final confrontation with Horus, the Emperor discovered something beneath the chaos surrounding the rebellion. Something that had used the War Master's hatred, pride, and corruption as a doorway. Horus was not simply a traitor. He was a symptom, a crack in the wall. Through him, something else had almost entered. The Emperor defeated Horus, but the damage had already been done. The gate had been touched, the barrier had weakened, and the Emperor made the final decision of his existence. He would remain upon the Golden Throne, not because he was defeated, but because leaving would allow something else to arrive. For 10,000 years, he had sacrificed himself to keep a promise nobody knew existed. Then came the message, the 17 seconds, the moment when every psyker in the galaxy heard his voice. The records explained what happened afterward. The Emperor had not intended to communicate with humanity. The message was an activation, a signal, a response. Something beyond reality had reached the edge of existence, and the Emperor answered. But why? Why reveal himself after 10,000 years? Why risk exposing the truth? The answer was hidden in a final transmission recorded moments before the message was sent. It contained only the Emperor's voice. Weak, distant, almost impossible to hear. Not the commanding voice of the Great Crusade. Not the voice that united Terra. This was the voice of someone exhausted after fighting a battle nobody else knew existed. I have delayed them as long as I can. That sentence alone changed everything. The Emperor was not preparing for victory. He was preparing for the end of the delay. Humanity must know. Another pause followed, not because they can stop what is coming. The recording became distorted, because they deserve to understand why. I listened to those words, again and again. The Emperor knew humanity would not survive the truth easily. The Imperium was built on controlled ignorance. Billions lived their entire lives without knowing what existed beyond their world. They believed in simple ideas. The Emperor protects, the enemy is known, the war continues. But the truth was not simple. The truth was that the Emperor himself had been afraid. And if the Master of Mankind was afraid, what chance did anyone else have? Then I discovered the final message. Not the 17-second transmission heard across the galaxy. This was the message hidden underneath it. The message only meant for those who found the archive. It was not recorded through technology. It was placed, directly into the chamber itself, waiting. The moment I accessed it, every light in the vault turned gold. The machines awakened. Ancient symbols appeared across the walls. And then I heard him. Not the distant voice from before. This was closer, clearer, painfully human. If you are hearing this, then my silence has failed. I could feel my entire body freeze. The Emperor continued. For 10,000 years I have protected mankind from truths it was not ready to face. A pause. But ignorance is no longer protection. The chamber trembled. The voice became weaker. The thing approaching does not hate humanity. That sentence confused me more than anything else. It does not seek our destruction. Another pause. It seeks completion. The final words were almost impossible to hear. But I heard them, and I wished I had not. I created the Imperium to save humanity from extinction. Silence. Now I fear I created the perfect vessel for what comes after. The message ended. The chamber returned to darkness, and for the first time since the Emperor spoke, I understood the true horror hidden inside those 17 seconds. The Emperor was not warning humanity about an enemy. He was warning humanity about itself. because somewhere in the darkness between stars, something was waiting. Something that did not want to kill mankind. Something that believed mankind was the missing piece it had been searching for. And the Emperor had spent 10,000 years making sure it never found us. The greatest fear of mankind was always the unknown. For thousands of years, humanity had stared into the darkness between stars and imagined countless horrors hiding within it. Alien empires waiting to invade, demons crawling from the warp, ancient machines buried beneath forgotten worlds, enemies with names, faces, and weapons. The Imperium understood enemies because enemies could be fought, they could be destroyed, they could be hated. But the truth hidden beneath the Emperor's final message was something far worse than an enemy. It was something that did not hate us, something that did not wish to conquer us, something that simply believed humanity belonged to it. After hearing the Emperor's hidden warning, I remained inside the forgotten chamber for what felt like weeks, although the chronometers around me gave different answers. Time itself seemed unstable near the ancient systems beneath Terra. Sometimes minutes passed like hours. Sometimes hours disappeared like seconds. The closer I became to the truth, the less reality seemed to obey its own rules. That was the first lesson I learned about the thing the Emperor had spent 10,000 years holding back. It was not simply powerful. Power was something humans understood. Weapons had power. Armies had power. The Emperor himself possessed unimaginable power. But this was something different. It did not overpower reality. It changed the meaning of reality. The records inside the chamber revealed fragments of encounters that had been hidden since before the Horus Heresy. Not battles, not wars, encounters. The Emperor had discovered that something existed beyond the boundaries of the known universe. Something that had no empire, no armies, and no worlds. It did not travel through space because space was irrelevant to it. It did not invade civilizations because invasion was unnecessary. It waited until civilizations reached a certain point, until they developed certain technologies, until they began to understand the nature of existence itself. Then it watched. The ancient records referred to it by many names, but none were true names. Humanity has always named things it fears because naming creates the illusion of control. The Chaos Gods, the Great Devourer, the Necrons, the Tyranids. Every threat became less terrifying once given a title. But this thing had no title because it had existed before language, before history, before memory. The Emperor called it only one thing: the listener. At first I thought the name was meaningless. Then I understood. The Emperor had not feared something that attacked humanity. He feared something that listened, something that observed, something that waited for civilizations to reveal themselves. The 17-second message had not been a warning sent to mankind. It had been a response. The Emperor had realized the listener had finally noticed humanity. And once something like that noticed you, hiding became impossible. The most disturbing records came from the earliest years of the Great Crusade. Before the Imperium expanded across the galaxy, the Emperor had traveled beyond Terra searching for lost human civilizations. Official records describe these campaigns as reunification, humanity returning to its rightful place among the stars. But hidden documents revealed another purpose. The Emperor was searching for signs, evidence that other civilizations had encountered the same presence. And he found them. Worlds abandoned without signs of war. Planets where entire populations vanished overnight. Cities left untouched except for one strange detail. Every surviving record contained the same message. We were not destroyed, we were changed. I read those words hundreds of times because they revealed something horrifying. The listener did not erase civilizations, it transformed them. The Emperor had not spent 10,000 years fighting an enemy that wanted humanity dead. He had been protecting humanity from something that wanted to improve it. The thought itself was terrifying, because destruction creates resistance. But salvation is something people accept. The Emperor understood this better than anyone. Humanity had always chased perfection, immortality, evolution, advancement. the dream of becoming something greater. The listener offered exactly that. It did not promise death. It promised completion. And that was why the Emperor feared it, because humanity might choose it willingly. The chamber revealed another secret about the Primarchs. For thousands of years, scholars debated why the Emperor created beings so powerful that they could conquer entire worlds alone. The official answer was simple. They were generals, leaders, sons created to guide humanity's future. But the hidden records showed another reason. The Emperor knew ordinary humans would never survive contact with what was coming. The Primarchs were not only warriors, they were experiments. Attempts to create beings capable of standing between humanity and forces beyond comprehension. But even the Primarchs were vulnerable. They had emotions, pride, anger, ambition, love. The very qualities that made them human were also weaknesses. The Emperor created them to protect mankind, but he also created beings who could be manipulated by something that understood humanity better than humanity understood itself. Then came the realization that chilled me more than anything else. Horus was not chosen because he was weak. He was chosen because he was perfect. The listener did not corrupt the weakest. It influenced the strongest. It did not break humanity's enemies. It studied humanity's greatest achievements and found the cracks inside them. The Horus heresy was not just a rebellion. It was proof that even the Emperor's greatest creations could be turned against him. The chamber suddenly activated while I was reading those records. A new transmission appeared. Not from the Emperor, from somewhere else. The screen displayed no language, yet I understood the meaning instantly. It was a response. The listener knew I was there. I wanted to destroy the machine. I wanted to run. Every instinct inside me screamed that I had discovered something forbidden, something no human mind should witness. But I remained frozen, because beneath the fear there was another emotion, curiosity, the same curiosity that had driven humanity into the stars, the same curiosity that had created the Imperium, the same curiosity that had allowed the Emperor to discover the truth. A message appeared, 3 words: "We have waited." I could barely breathe. The chamber walls began changing. The ancient symbols were rewriting themselves, not randomly, like a conversation. The listener was not attacking, it was communicating. Another message appeared. "Your creator understood." I stared at those words for several minutes. Your creator, not the Emperor, not mankind. Your creator. The implication was impossible. But then I understood the true horror. The listener was not speaking about humanity's creation as a species. It was speaking about something else, something the Emperor had done, something he had hidden even from humanity. The final message appeared slowly. "He built you to survive us." The chamber went completely silent, because that was the moment everything changed. The Emperor had always been described as humanity's protector, the architect of the Imperium, the father of mankind's future. But what if the Imperium was never meant to rule the galaxy? What if it was a fortress? What if every war, every sacrifice, every terrible decision had one purpose? To prepare humanity for something that even the Emperor believed might defeat him. The listener had not come to destroy humanity. It had come because humanity had finally become ready to evolve, ready to change, ready to become something beyond its original design. And somewhere above us, sitting upon the golden throne, the Emperor felt it too. For the first time in 10,000 years, the thing he feared had reached Terra. The barrier was weakening, the lock was failing, and the final message he sent was no longer a warning. It was a farewell, because the Emperor knew something humanity did not. The listener was not arriving. It had already arrived. There are moments in history that divide everything that came before from everything that comes after. Moments so powerful that the universe itself seems to remember them. The birth of the Imperium, the fall of Horus, the opening of the Great Rift, the first steps of humanity among the stars. But none of those moments carried the same weight as the day the Emperor spoke one final time, because by then, the truth had already been discovered. The message was not a warning. The listener was not an invading force. The Emperor was not simply a dying ruler waiting for the end. He was a guardian standing at the edge of an impossible door, holding it closed with the last pieces of his strength, and now that door was opening. After the ancient chamber revealed the existence of the listener, I expected panic. I expected the Imperium to collapse beneath the weight of the truth. I expected Terra to fall into chaos as billions discovered that everything they believed was incomplete. But humanity reacted exactly as it always had. It fought. The Adeptus Custodes sealed entire sections of the Imperial Palace. The Inquisition began hunting every record connected to the event. The Mechanicus deployed thousands of machines to investigate the impossible energy fluctuations beneath Terra. The Ecclesiarchy declared the Emperor's message a miracle. The Imperium transformed the unknown into another reason for war. That was humanity's greatest strength and its greatest weakness. When faced with something impossible to understand, mankind raised weapons before raising questions. But there was one person who had always understood the danger of that instinct: the Emperor. The hidden records showed that he had never wanted humanity to worship him. He had never wanted to become a god. He had wanted humanity to grow beyond the need for gods, beyond fear, beyond superstition, beyond blindly following beings more powerful than themselves. But history had twisted his dream into something else. The Imperium became exactly what he had tried to prevent: a civilization built on faith, a galaxy-spanning empire where billions prayed to a being who had spent his entire existence warning humanity about the dangers of worship. And yet, despite all of that, he never abandoned them. That was the tragedy of the Emperor. He hated what humanity had become, but he loved humanity too much to leave it behind. The final records beneath Terra contained one last conversation. It was not between the Emperor and a Primarch. It was not between the Emperor and one of his generals. It was a conversation with himself. A recording created moments before the Golden Throne fully activated. In it, his voice was different. Not the voice of a conqueror, not the voice of a ruler. A tired voice, a lonely voice. I have spent my entire existence trying to create a future where I am unnecessary. The words remained inside my mind long after I heard them, because they revealed the greatest sacrifice of the Emperor. He did not want eternal rule. He did not want humanity to depend on him forever. He wanted to disappear, to become a forgotten figure in history while mankind continued without him. But that future never arrived. Instead, humanity built an empire around his absence. It turned his sacrifice into religion. It transformed his warnings into commandments. It created a civilization that could survive only by worshiping the very thing he wanted them to surpass. Then the Golden Throne changed. The entire Imperial Palace felt it. Every alarm stopped. Every machine became silent. Every custodian turned toward the throne room. Across the galaxy, astropaths felt the same impossible sensation. The Emperor was awake. Not physically, not in the way legends imagined. His body remained broken. His form remained connected to the ancient machinery that had sustained him for 10,000 years. But his consciousness reached outward once more. This time, however, he did not speak to humanity. He spoke to the listener. For 17 seconds, the galaxy waited. Then the second message began. Everyone who heard it described the same feeling. The Emperor was not afraid. He was grieving. The first words were simple. I remember. Those two words carried the weight of 10,000 years. He remembered Terra before the Imperium. He remembered the Great Crusade. He remembered the Primarchs as children. He remembered Horus before betrayal. He remembered every soldier who died believing their sacrifice mattered. He remembered every world lost in his name. And then he said something nobody expected. I was wrong. The Imperium would later attempt to erase those words. They could not, because millions heard them. The Emperor, the being humanity had worshipped as perfect, admitted that he had made mistakes. He admitted that his plans had failed. He admitted that power alone could not save humanity. Then came the final warning, the words that would haunt every survivor forever. Do not become what they offer. The message was not about the listener, it was about choice. The Emperor knew humanity would eventually face a decision. Continue as it was, a species trapped in endless war, fear, and worship, or accept the transformation being offered by something beyond understanding. The listener promised perfection, evolution, completion, a future without suffering, and that was the greatest temptation of all, because humanity had always wanted exactly that, a way to escape pain, a way to escape death, a way to become something greater. The Emperor's final words were almost impossible to hear. Some claimed they were instructions, others believed they were a goodbye. But those closest to the Golden Throne understood the truth. He was not commanding humanity anymore. He was asking them, choose what you become. Then silence returned. The Astronomicon burned brighter than it ever had before. The warp screamed, the stars trembled, and the Emperor's presence disappeared once again. But something had changed. The Golden Throne was no longer only a prison. It was no longer only a machine keeping a dying god alive. It had become a monument to a final act of defiance. The Emperor had spent 10,000 years holding back something humanity could never defeat through strength alone. He had protected mankind not because they were worthy, not because they were perfect, but because they still had the ability to choose. Years later, I would return to the archives beneath Terra. The official records claimed nothing unusual had happened. The 17-second message was classified. The hidden chamber was declared non-existent. The listener was removed from every database. The Imperium continued its endless war among the stars. But I kept one final record hidden. A single piece of evidence that the Emperor had spoken. Not because I wanted people to worship him. Not because I wanted people to fear what was coming. I kept it because someone needed to remember the truth. The Emperor was never a god who saved humanity from the darkness. He was a man who stood in front of it for as long as he could, and when he finally could not stand anymore, he did not ask humanity to kneel. He asked humanity to decide. Because the final message of the Emperor was never a prophecy. It was never a command. It was never a warning of the end. It was the last gift of a father who knew he could not protect his children forever. A final reminder that even in a galaxy where there is only war, even beneath the shadow of endless darkness, humanity still possesses one thing no enemy can take away: the ability to choose what comes next.